Hello, hello, everyone. We are now going to talk about service design and user research. We are still waiting for one panelist, but in the meantime, we thought it would be good to start introducing ourselves. I am the research director at MindSpark, but in a previous life, I was working in service design and specifically business design. So I was given this opportunity to build a panel and talk about this subject that is very dear to my heart. I'm going to give the mic to my lovely panel for them to introduce themselves to you guys. And Rit is also here, so I'm going to grab him in as well. So Carmen, do you want to start talking?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Carmen Brooms. I'm a lead UX researcher at Handshake. Excited to talk to you about this subject today. Just a little background about myself. I've spent probably about almost 20 years in UX. So I've seen it transform and change and specialize in lots of different ways. I've been practicing research particularly for about 10 years. And so just really excited to be part of this panel and share a little bit about what I know about this particular area.
Lovely. Thank you so much for joining us. Ezgi, tell us about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ezgi, and I'm a design director at Fjord, based in Berlin. So we do digital service design, as we call it, but we look across also physical services as well lately. So it's so nice to see also Rit from the old life. Looking forward to our chat.
Thank you, Ezgi. Hi, Rit.
Hi, Elvin.
Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Rit Mishra. Currently, I'm working at Intuit. I'm group design manager. Me and my team drives product strategy and experience strategy for Intuit's commerce product. Historically, before Intuit, I have been with Fjord and Idean, some of the largest design agencies. And that's where Ezgi, Elvin, and I worked in our previous lives. And currently, I'm in San Francisco.
Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to dive right in and start with a philosophical definition question of, can you tell us, in your opinion, what is the relationship between service design and user research? What role does research play in service design? Who would like to start?
I can go first. I think research plays a very critical role, not only in service design, but design as a whole, any process that you think of. It's very integral process of service design for sure. But if you think about industrial design, product design, fashion design, UX, digital design, to me, research is a process of collecting and identifying ingredients before you start cooking, so to speak. Just as an analogy. Research does help us to really build the customer empathy and get to know a lot more about who you're designing for, who your customer is, what's their background, where they are coming from, what are their pains, goals, what are their intentions, mental state. So all of that is how you uncover, and research plays that critical role in identifying some of those.
Anybody else has something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I will also add that if we think about the customer journey and think about all the different touch points, research plays a huge role in that. From the point of, you can think about when they call a particular support team, like what is that experience like? If they get their product, when they open a box, what is that experience like? So really thinking about the entire touch points of the customer journey and the customer experience, and research can play a critical and a huge role in helping to deliver insights when it comes to that.
Okay, maybe I take the microphone. I feel like lately I tried to change my terminology a little bit from user research to human or even like planet research, because I feel like brands or any service provider think of their user or consumer customer in a very limited way where the person starts interacting with whatever they provide. However, the whole experience is way bigger than that. So I may not be a user of a platform yet, but I might be thinking about it. And there are so many lost insights before and after the defined user journey, I would say. So I think there's a lot of things to explore also there. For me, it's not only user research anymore. It's like human research and also like looking at also the planetary impact. So looking at all the other beings.
Yeah,
I love that definition.
And to that note, I think something that's really dear to my heart is this term user does not necessarily mean customer, consumer, the person that buys the product or uses the product. It could very well be, and I think more and more is, internal. So it's the business, the processes within the business, how things work, like a support system for a big company, for example. Any experience in that, and how do you see that flourishing in the future?
I think you touched upon one of the most critical aspects of when you think about research for service design. It's not only consumer facing, it's not only customer facing. That's, of course, a very critical aspect. But the other side, which is backstage research, I think that's super critical. Just identifying what are different processes, who are different stakeholders, what are different channels and tools and methodology that we have internally to deliver awesome customer experience really unpacks and uncovers intervention points for businesses and companies where to go and fix, why we are not able to deliver awesome experiences. So yeah, I think that backstage research and identifying those opportunity areas is one of the most critical part of research for service design.
And
Carmen, I think you're on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say 100% agree. I think that sometimes uncovering some of those nuances can really be impactful to the business in ways that you may have missed or you don't necessarily know. So one of the things that I try to do, and I encourage anyone to do, is when you take on a project, get to know the support team. Make relationships there, get to know the sales team. So don't just think about, like, as a user experience researcher, we're designing for this product. Try to get to know all the sides of the business, because that is really going to tell the whole picture and really get to some meat that you may not realize that you need to get to.
Do you have anything to add to this, Ezgi? I know you're working a lot with sustainability and the impact of internal processes.
I mean, I've been at Fjord for so long, and you know that, for like 8 years, and then I've seen like the waves of different industries getting into service design and fancying it and trying to do something with it. It was like probably financial services, then came automotive, and then came pharma, and then I'm still looking what the fourth generation could be. And then for the last year, I've been looking a lot into manufacturing transformation. So the people I would normally do research with, people like you and me, someone on the street who uses a banking app, for example, that completely changed. Now I'm trying to do research with engineers in a production plant, or, for instance, of course, there are like ethical questions about it, but would you work for an oil company? But there are people risking their lives to do something, like do their jobs. And then these are some of the areas where we can create the biggest impact. And sustainability would also start with first providing some sort of visibility on the status, because we can't fix what we don't know. So trying to understand what people need to know in an industrial setup so that they can fix what needs to be fixed. I think that has been my focus lately, but it's been terribly hard with the pandemic, because even though like maybe with the restrictions, becoming easier, we could do some sort of research with people. However, now with you can't necessarily go into a plant in a factory or in an industrial setup without permission, so it's fully remote.
And that has obviously had an impact on you. So remote research is not necessarily sufficient in that scenario.
I mean, It's like instead of observing what people need or trying to explore how their work life is like, we need to more do faster learning, build something, test it. So from explorative research, it had to evolve into evaluative research, because like it's always easier to express your opinions on something tangible, which I wouldn't prefer before COVID. But well, here we are.
So, what in your mind can designers learn and keep in mind when they think about qualitative research? I know that this has really evolved in the past, well, at least 8 years, as you say, Ezgi. The definition of it has changed as well. It was just designers asking a few questions to their friends and families before they designed was what it was back in the day, in archaeological terms. But what do you think they need to keep in mind now, and what are the nuances that it provides? What is the depth that it provides, and what should they be looking out for? Anyone?
Go for it.
I can chime in a little bit. I definitely want to elaborate more. I definitely think that understanding the business and how the business operates will play a role on the design of the experience. So you may have experienced a situation where you're purchasing something, but it seems like they're separate things in separate places, but you kind of see it as one, you just see one brand, but you don't understand why you have to log in to these 3 different places and it's with the same company. So one of the things that I would say is to learn all of the businesses and the sides of the business and how those different silos can show up in actually the experience that our users or the users that you're hoping to serve would experience. And work with your teams, work with your product teams, work with your leadership to advocate for a better experience so that we're not creating these siloed experiences that we have seen in a lot of products on a lot of websites in a lot of places.
How about you, Ezgi, or Rit? Either one of you.
Sure. I think one recommendation that I have for designers, and I apply that, add into it within my team, is try to spend a little bit of time designing your research. I think it's really important for you to have a very clear objective and goal for your research, and what are the outcomes that will help your team in order to be more innovative and think outside the box. I've seen there's so many canned, pre-canned tools, methodologies, and processes out there. It's very easy for anyone to simply handpick those processes. For example, let's do SWOT analysis, or let's do service blueprinting or customer journey mapping without truly understanding why you want to do that. What's the end objective? What are the insights you're kind of seeking for in order to deliver that business impact? So that's one recommendation that I have for designers, that design your research, because that is a way for you to identify what are the ingredients and how you're going to find those in order to kind of prepare the meal at later stage.
I love that, because like running research and then analyzing it and creating some sort of actionable insights from it, it takes so long time. But if you prepare your research well enough, if you plan it well enough, then it just becomes way more natural and quicker later on. So it saves time. What I could add to it is this whole beginner's mindset, because we all have preconceptions in our mind about people, how they do things, why they do things, what they like, what they don't like. And I feel like whoever goes into any research session, you need to be almost like a 3-year-old, 2-year-old kid seeing the rain for the first time, trying to understand, oh, why is this person doing this? And then why is it that happening? Why are they asking these questions? I mean, it can become annoying to the participants, but it's also you learn to keep the balance in time. So asking the why and trying to have no preconceptions and having a beginner's mindset.
Yeah, I love that. And just to echo, I think being willing to be wrong it's super important. So, I mean, we've heard of, fall in love with the problem, not the solution. So I think that's so important to echo what.
I completely agree. We always go into the field with a hypothesis, and more often than not, it's shot down, and there's a whole different set of problems that actually are unearthed by that initial question. So that level of flexibility is really, really useful in the service design process. So we all know there are various cycles in the service design process. Do you have, can you tell me what the differences are in terms of methodologies and the depth of, the depth of the various cycles, the depth of studies that you do for them?
Maybe I
guess,
can go.
From the get-go, if it's an inexistent service, just the idea of a service is the idea, hypothesis of a problem, your approach would be much more different than something that's already inbuilt, even.
I mean, I feel like the types of projects that kind of come to my table is either quite strategic to define a vision for a company or to actually deliver to that vision. Sometimes the two comes together. And then when we need to finally go live with something to the market, of course, then for me, it needs to, it kind of evolved into smaller groups, quicker sessions, and then faster iteration when it comes to digital product design, which is one part of service design from my perspective. But when it's about strategizing about a solution or trying to understand the problem atmosphere, then I think it needs to be longer and, supported with digital anthropology as well. And I always love being on the field as much as possible.
I think from my side, I have worked in both agency world and also product company for the last 5.5 years. And I've seen, especially when it comes to service design process, in agency, you will have a lot more opportunities to think about services from 0 to 1, innovate something completely ground up. Whereas when I think about product companies, it's mainly incremental improvements, whether it's a product or service. How do you incrementally improve service delivery, create higher value for your customers? So that's one of the key difference when I think about these two kind of models of operation. To me, I think there's more opportunities to do deeper research so that you have a lot more customer empathy, and you're also kind of uncovering some of the backstage gaps that you might have. But when it comes to product company, you actually may already have treasure trove of information already at your dispense. So a lot of time, me and my team also does a lot of speculative design and research, whereas we may even have some sort of service or product positioning that we want to validate from customer, because we already know from business side who are the key customers that we want to focus, what are the services that's already in place that we need to continue to improve. So those are two things that jumps out to me when I think about overall service design process.
Yeah, and just to add to that, mostly I have not worked at an agency, so all of my experience have been working in product in some way, or for a company, not for agency. But in that sense, I do a lot of shadowing. For example, if we're gonna talk about backstage, shadowing the support teams, sitting with them, watching what they do. Taking notes, listening in on calls. I've experienced this at several companies where I've made relationships with the support team, for example, and they would give me headset and I could sit there and listen in on the calls and observe the floor. So that would be like a small thing I would recommend. But yeah, there's lots of different methods that we could use. I think it just really depends on the goals of the business and what we're trying to accomplish.
And what about being forced to go remote lately? Has that had an impact? I mean, obviously it has, we discussed this, but have you found areas where it actually made things better in a way? Or has the impact been limiting across the board?
Now I can go first. I think it has pros and cons. I have personally seen, so we have certain methods, for example, Follow Me Home, where we actually go to small, medium businesses where they are functioning, where they run their business, just to observe and shadow what kind of products and services they're using. Or we also have this method of adopting a business where you actually spend significant amount of your time every month, every quarter, every year to help the businesses with their branding and accounting and bookkeeping and so on. A lot of this is not possible when you go fully remote. So of course, there has been a lot of struggle in terms of how do you do that? How do you observe which spaces they are functioning in? So you're not getting that granular information or insight or just feel of it. You know what I mean? So that has a negative impact. But on a positive side, what I'm observing, especially with my team at Intuit, is we have expanded our horizon a lot. So we are not only looking at customers only in Bay Area or in California. Now we are reaching out to any customer anywhere who might be a potential customer for Intuit. And that has a very positive impact on how we are engaging with potential customers, not only in one geo, but globally. So that's, to me, is the positive side of this.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Ezgi? Do you have any anecdotes to tell us?
I was trying to force myself to only talk about the positives, and it has been a long journey to get there. So I feel like when it comes to involving different parties from a project setup, inclusion is definitely through the roof. You can invite anyone, and it takes shorter time for them to participate and at least observe the feedbacks and gather the insights for themselves. And then it also, I think, breaks the silos, especially, we are part of Accenture, a huge consulting company. And if the clients are specifically in Germany, quite siloed, quite traditional in that sense. And this helps us break the silos a little bit. And then I feel like specifically working with B2B participants, so people in the professional setup, like engineers, for example, when you do research with them on site, they felt like, they are kind of being tested or reviewed or audited, even though you try not to make them feel like that. And I feel like that went down because they are all of a sudden more sharing and then more easier to, ask the hard questions. So those would be the 2 points.
Carmen, I think there's a question coming to you from the floor as well. Since you're in EdTech, how did the research that goes into product service design change in the wake of the pandemic is coming from the floor to you? And are there any trends that you've observed that you'd like to share with us?
Ooh, that's a good one. So I will say I've only been at Handshake for 3 months. So I want to definitely say that. So it's hard for me to talk about the changes with the pandemic. I don't think I would be the right person to talk about, but I can say what I know the team did prior to my arrival, of course, is that a lot of things that we used to do at Handshake, which was, if you're familiar with Handshake, it was a lot of in-person events, right? And so a lot of the ways that students found jobs is through events and making relationships with employers throughout their college career. And a lot of these were employers coming to the college campuses. So of course, with the pandemic, all of that went away. So we have shifted to a virtual experience and virtual environment, which actually was a huge win. And the reason why I say that is because I can't take credit for that. I just started 3 months ago, but it was a huge win for the team. They did such a great job. And so where we are moving forward is really kind of what is this hybrid experience. Like virtual is not going away. Students are going to want to meet with employers virtually. It helps to democratize opportunity when employers can't get to certain schools or certain places or certain opportunity or in certain areas. So it creates opportunity for more students. But in the same way, people still want that human connection. They still want to meet someone, get to know them, see them face to face. So I really think we're going to see a little bit of the hybrid as we move forward in this space. And
so taking that on to service design, how do you see with what we've lived through these past couple of years and kind of there's an inkling of normalization, but I hate the word new normal, but we are moving into something that's different than what it was before. How do you see service design evolving around this, and how do you see its relationship with research evolving around this?
Oh, so many ways. Let me count the ways.
Please do.
I think that there is going to be so much opportunity for us and for our research team to really think about what this hybrid experience is going to be like. What is it going to be like to have a virtual event and then have a event that's in person? And there's lots of research opportunity for us to be able to do both, to do research with the virtual experience, to where I want to go with our team and our research team is like, I want us to go to college campuses. I want us to visit different campuses and go to different events that we're going to host throughout the country. Or, and maybe we're not hosting an event, but meet with the Career Services Administration on the different college campuses, understand their nuances and how they work. So I really see that for research in particular and thinking in the way of service design is really, we're going to be doing a lot of hybrid and really understanding not just how we operate as a business, but how schools help students, what career services is like at different schools, because it's not all the same and all the schools don't necessarily operate in the same way. So I'm really excited about the opportunity and what we're going to be doing there.
How about you guys? Any impact that you foresee for the future?
I think in a very tactical way, I'm already seeing pace of innovation when it comes to digital tools to support this kind of remote co-creation, collaboration, and research as well. From Miro to Figma to many collaborative tools that have really propped up and supporting some of those remote collaboration. And I'm pretty sure we will see more and more evolution in terms of some of these digital tools to support remote research and service design processes.
Anything to add, Ezgi?
Yes, trying to unmute myself.
You're on mute.
Now I'm unmute. So, with the tools and everything, even Microsoft Teams had to put a breakout group functionality, and then they are generally quite slow in doing things like that. So for me, the changing part will be we're not only researching humans anymore, but also we are looking at automation quite closely with the forced digitalization in multiple industries, specifically in industrial setup. So basically robots and humans, how do they work together and what they can achieve together? Like, why would they automate one thing and not the other thing? And then how do we fill in the gaps, and make sure where the human ingenuity is needed, where we keep it? I think that's, for me, the philosophical side, researching robots.
Researching and curating and humanizing and also ensuring inclusivity because, they work the way we program them. And I think research needs to feed into it across the board for it to function, in an inclusive manner. And when you talked about inclusivity, that was interesting. My experience is quite different where the digital divide became much more apparent to me doing research remotely. Like, you need a minimal internet connection to be able to have a Zoom chat online. And for people who don't, then reaching out to them during the pandemic became doubly difficult. And I can't imagine doing, service design specific research. I can't imagine how that could have reached that far as well with the connection issues across the board around the world.
I'm positively surprised. Sorry, Eski.
Sorry, you go.
I'm positively surprised that we didn't have any technical issues so far. Sorry.
I know. Don't jinx it.
I know. Sorry about that.
I think we have a huge responsibility as like designers and design researchers, because our bubble, we already knew about the bubble, and it got smaller and smaller and smaller, and we lost connection to many others that we could normally meet. And this is not only friends and family, but like groups of people that we could engage with, and we can't right now. How do we solve that? I don't know right now, but we have to, I think about that.
Nikki is hinting at a question for our panelists. Go ahead, type it, Nikki. Any thoughts on the vocabulary, language, syntax we use? Elvin said calling for user doesn't always fit the idea of service design. To me, it says so much about building a comprehensive experience. Yeah, this is going back to, pigeonholing things into users. Like, we are studying processes as well in service design. We are studying a combination of humans doing something, maybe in the wrong way, not in the optimal way, or doing something that's missing. So how do you have any thoughts around the vocabulary that we use and how we can streamline it and how we can define where we stand better?
I just say people. I always use the word people. And if the client uses the word consumer, customer, user, then I turn it into people. And then this also takes us to the need of how do different people in their service ecosystem interact with each other, because one could be the decision maker, one could be the payer, one could be the user. And then there's a bunch of people in there. And we can start by understanding that.
That's interesting. You make it sound almost as if it's people and all the other words that we use are subsegments of that bigger group.
Yeah, plus one to that, which is, I think there's a distinction between user and customer. Customer might fall into who's going to pay for your product and service. And those are the differences that service design uncovers and unpacks for you. Customer is very different from user. User might be someone who is really on day-to-day basis using your tool or service, but customer might be completely different. So those are some of the key differences. And I think we end up using them very broadly. Sometimes we use customer, user, but I love the fact that we should, when we are thinking about service design and research, we should literally zoom out and talk about people and humans and their experiences rather than specifying to certain roles and so on.
Yeah, I love that point, actually. Thinking about the human aspect of it, because that's really the meat. That's really what it boils down to. And I agree 100%. There's a big difference between the user of the product and the customer, right? The customer may make the decision making as far as purchasing, but may not ever use the product. And so I love what you said about zooming out and thinking high level, because it's really about creating human experiences is really what we're talking about.
Yeah. And, I think when you're talking about customer, as you mentioned, there's a decision, there's an innate decision having been made, a choice having been made in that. Whilst when we're talking about people and processes and internal, background research and all of that, that choice may not be theirs. They might actually be presented with that tool and they need to make do with that tool. And that's where the pain points actually appear much clearer, maybe because they haven't gone through the selection process and the choosing process.
Plus one to that. Yeah. And you will see a lot of UX research, the focus is on user, but you will see when it comes to service design, a lot of focus is on human and people, because there might be users, customers, and many other type of people who are involved in that service delivery process. So I think that's one of the key distinctions when we interchangeably use user and customer and so on.
There's a great question from the floor. Does this mean that the skills needed to understand users or customers or people or human are different?
I don't think so. I would say it's qualitative or quantitative, and you could use similar methodologies, the similar skills to understand all these groups of participants to your research.
Yeah, agreed. +1 again.
Who's keeping the tally of the pluses? I'm just going to ask the floor for one more question that we may have time for, but thank you so much for joining. Is there anything that's dear to your heart that you'd like to add about this, around this subject, and especially focusing on user research in relation to service design? Do you see it like, here's one question from me actually. When service design first became much more front of mind, we started talking, especially at Fjord, to have design at heart of everything that we do. Do you see a future and a necessity of having research at heart of what we do within all of these processes and services that we're designing?
I hope so. I hope so. Yes, I do. And I just add, like where I'm at right now, Handshake, it's a very small startup. So we are about 400 people. And honestly, 10 years ago, they probably would not have hired a researcher. But we're starting to see even small startups hire UX researchers, hire researchers in general, and see the value of that much earlier on than maybe what we saw 10 years ago. And that gives me a lot of hope. And it lets me know that a lot of companies see the value of research in really providing business impact and really understanding who their people are, who their customers are, who are their users. And they're recognizing the value of that much earlier than they used to.
One last question, big question from Nikki is what can we learn from service designers, us as UX researchers? What do you think we could learn from you? What are keys that you'd like to share with us?
I mean, I think having a more holistic view on the full service experience, because I was a UX designer and then turned into a service designer back in time, focusing on interaction design. And then I felt like UX design could be serving to one part of the whole service journey. And then when you take a step back, when you see different touch points interacting with each other, then you can design better.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. It was very lovely to see some old friends on this panel as well, and lovely to meet you, Carmen. We have now with Norbert, our dear Norbert's going to be hosting social innovation, social justice. So if you click on exit at the bottom screen and then go back to your dashboard and meet us over there. And thank you again for joining. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.